Hey there, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Welcome to TCM. Up next, our night of movies where rain helps drive the story continues with a film I put into a specific category, one having nothing to do with genre or style. I'm talking about really well-made, memorable American movies released between 1967 and 1976, the greatest 10-year period in the history of American movies. But these are films that don't get much attention precisely because the era produced so many celebrated classics. A director responsible for three of those classics that did get their due is Francis Ford Coppola, who made The Godfather Part 2, and The Conversation. He also wrote and directed this little-known gem from 1969, The Rain People. Shirley Knight stars as a young, pregnant housewife. She isn't sure she wants to be a mother, or a wife, for that matter. One day, she gets into her car and drives off with no particular destination in mind. On the road, she picks up a hitchhiker with problems of his own. That's James Caan. Cast also includes Robert Duvall as a cop who enters the story later on with dramatic results. Francis Ford Coppola wrote and directed The Rain People at the end of the first decade of his filmmaking career. Prior to this, he directed just three other features on his own. His debut, Dementia 13, made for producer Roger Corman. You're a Big Boy Now, a comedy about a young man in New York unsure of how to escape his overbearing parents. And then most notably, the 1968 musical Finian's Rainbow, starring Fred Astaire and Petula Clark. Finian's Rainbow had been a frustrating experience for Coppola, who served only as the director, not the writer, on that production, and he felt his creative control was limited. For his follow-up, Coppola decided to take the reins, writing and directing a much smaller, more intimate film of his own. He shot The Rain People on location, bringing his cast and crew across the country in a small caravan, which included one of his associate producers, a guy named George Lucas. Lucas was still 2 years away from making his feature directorial debut, but he did direct a short documentary about the making of The Rain People. The 32-minute film, called Filmmaker, shows how Coppola put this together as he went, working without a completed script and drawing inspiration from the actors and the locations. It is obviously definitely worth seeing, and so is this film. From Coppola's production company, American Zoetrope, and released by Warner Brothers 7 Arts in 1969. Again, Shirley Knight, James Caan, and Robert Duvall in The Rain People. Francis Ford Coppola wrote and directed The Rain People close to the beginning of his career. It was just his fourth feature as a solo director. The movie received mixed reviews, although Roger Ebert compared it favorably to a groundbreaking movie released the same year, Easy Rider. Still, despite some critical praise, the film was not a box office hit. Coppola had far more success at the box office with his next feature, The Godfather, released 3 years later. The Godfather also reunited Coppola with two of the stars of The Rain People, James Caan and Robert Duvall. Both Caan and Duvall earned Oscar nominations for their supporting roles in The Godfather. In between The Rain People and The Godfather, Coppola also wrote the screenplay for Patton, which earned him his first Academy Award. Robert Duvall went on to work with Coppola on 3 more films in the 1970s that cemented Coppola's reputation as one of the finest directors who ever lived, The Godfather Part 2, The Conversation, and Apocalypse Now. 2 years after The Rain People, Duvall teamed up again with one of the film's associate producers, George Lucas. He starred in Lucas's feature directorial debut, THX 1138, released in 1971. Coming up, we're sticking with tonight's rain theme, continuing with a landmark musical starring Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, and Donald O'Connor. Singing in the Rain is next on Turner Classic Movies.
Next on TCM, Singing in the Rain, then Rain, and later, Obliging Young Lady. Eve Arden's Awfully Agreeable Tonight.